Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Masterclass speaker interview. Um, Today in the studio with me, I've got Moshe Reuven Schneider. Is that correct?
That's it, you got it.
Okay, great. We've got a fascinating. Moshe's going to be teaching an amazing masterclass, um, which everybody, I'm sure, is going to find absolutely fascinating. Moshe is he's a healer, and he's an amazing teacher, and he's chosen um, a path in life that I think very few people can actually walk, and for that I respect him greatly, and um, and that's why I've asked him to be one of our masterclass teachers. I think let's just introduce you first, and maybe just tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and where you come from and that sort of stuff.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. So, as you know, my name is Moshe. I am
Masha.
an ordinary guy, absolutely run of the mill dude, just trying to work out life and go through life. And essentially, I've had a lot of blessings, thank God, and I've had a lot of
Yes.
great direction, which is something that I speak about called hashkocha pratit, which means divine providence. But I've really been searching all my life for truth, and sort of haven't been happy with just the accepting what the general public or whatever is going on, and sort of
Yeah.
searching more. And through the searching, I've found a lot of teachers and a lot of growth and a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge that's been shared with me and taught to me. Um,
Mm.
so essentially, two like really big shifts happened in my life. The one was when I climbed Kilimanjaro, which was
Goodness me.
yeah, it was an
Wow.
incredible process. But
Sure.
essentially, what happened is on the third day of Kilimanjaro, I was hiking with a group of 12 guys, and like a really good group of people. And we were busy hiking, and on the third day, there was like the guy in my group who was about 100 meters ahead of me, and a guy behind me was about 100 meters behind me. So I was in a group of walking for about 14 kilometers, and essentially I started to get what I could just understand today as a vision. So I think it's because there was the altitude and the altitude on Kilimanjaro. So there was some chemical effect in my mind at the time. But essentially, I received the vision, and the vision showed me that I was going to become an Orthodox Hasidic Jewish man. I was already Jewish, but I was secular.
Hmm.
And and then later on, and then the vision showed me that later on I would meet an international group of healers of plant healers that are healing the planet. So I sort of had this vision on Kilimanjaro. I didn't really know what to do with it. So the only way I could sort of anchor the vision was I decided on the mountain to become vegetarian, and that lasted for about 2 weeks. But essentially, when I came down from Kilimanjaro after having that vision, I about a week later went to Israel, and that started a whole journey of real soul searching and real digging deep through the surface and going deeper into what's the purpose, what are we here for.
Mm.
Um, so essentially, that's brought me here. I live in South Africa. I work extensively with healers from South Africa and from Brazil, from the Amazon jungle, and yeah, we're on a mission to bring a high level of consciousness to people, into the world, to those who want to understand. And
Mm.
yeah, this is one of those processes.
Mm. Okay. Um, that's wonderful. That's an incredible experience to have.
Thank you.
Um, there's a lot of motivated people who were once in their lives very highly motivated people whose bodies are still on Everest somewhere, who didn't make
Yeah,
it,
correct.
and
Yeah,
even on Kilimanjaro.
yeah,
So, the fact that you attempted that, and it you had that vision is quite amazing.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's quite a blessing. Um, Moshe, so you live in Johannesburg. You live in South Africa, huh?
Yeah, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Okay. And okay, so Moshe, you work with plant medicine as well. For those people who don't understand what plant medicine is, could you explain it briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, the way this world was created in a way that there are forces. I'm going to speak from a mystical perspective, but it will come into what's logical. So there are
Okay.
forces that exist in the world that are forces that generally aren't for the greater good of humanity, so to speak. And there are forces
Yeah.
in the world that are really for the greater good of humanity. So essentially, the way these forces they all manifest from godliness. They all come from God from one God, and these
Yeah.
forces manifest through a contraction process, which is the Kabbalistic idea of the tree of life, which I'm going to speak about. And they manifest into this world, and they manifest into something physical, like, for example, a Coca-Cola or a bottle of water or orange juice or a plant or medication or medicine, etc. So to a un I don't know what the word would be, but to like a person who wouldn't understand or doesn't know, hasn't understood this yet. So it
Mm.
could all just seem through marketing or advertising that, okay, I have a headache, I should take this pill, or I'm hungry, I should eat this food, I should just have a McDonald's burger because I'm hungry, or whatever the case
Yeah.
is. But essentially, everything that we're eating and everything we're putting inside our bodies and everything that we're taking, it's either going to heighten our vibration, it's going to heal us, it's going to be a medicine for us, even if it's just food, or it's going to alter our vibration, it's going to lower our frequency, it's going to sort of bring us into a lower state of consciousness, lower state of being. So, where the plant medicines come in, and this is a really important concept, but throughout history, for thousands and thousands of years, tribes, indigenous tribes from all over the world, before doctors, before pharmacies, have been working
Mm.
with natural plants for healing, for all different types of diseases, for all different types of ailments, skin diseases, stomachs, minds, soul diseases like depression, like anxiety, stuff that's more physical, like rashes. They've been working with all different types of plants. So, where industry sort of got involved is where science and modern day thinking got involved and started to
Mm.
take all these plants and all these recipes and these secrets and turn them into different medications.
Mm.
And that's become an industry. So it's like the medications, everyone's running to take some form of medication. In some cases, it is good. In some cases, there are cases where medication should be used. But in general cases, 80% of the time, it's definitely not the case. But the way
Mm.
the system of the world is set up is that people are teaching that as long as a guy has a doctorate and he has a white jacket and a stethoscope,
Yeah.
so whatever he says I should take, I should take. So that's
Mm.
that's that's medication. And then you have plant medicine. Plant medicine is preventative medication. In some
Yeah.
cases, it serves as medication as well. But there are plants, all different types of plants from different cultures. That when we work with these plants in a sacred setting, with intention, with preparation, with diet, there are incredible effects on the human psyche, on the soul, on the body, in all different ways. So that's really what plant medicine is. There are various different types of plant medicines and different types of natural healings for all different types of ailments. It's an extensive study. I'm in the beginning of it, and I've focused on specific plants that I'm working with. Um, but essentially, there's a lot of space and there's a lot of healing. I hope that's helped.
Yes. Yes. And I have a lot more questions for you on that, but we'll leave that for the masterclass. Uh, that's wow, that's exciting. I'm really looking forward to that masterclass. Um, right. So the class that you're going to be talking on is on the tree of life, also known as the
Sefirot.
Sefirot. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what the class is going to be like for those? who will be interested in attending it.
Sure. So, yeah, first of all, just sending out a really big blessing to everyone who is participating in this. Essentially, this is my greatest passion, and this masterclass, which is on the Sefirot, which is the tree of life, is really a blueprint, and it's something that every single human being definitely needs to understand, because it's a blueprint of creation. And when we can understand the blueprint of creation, we can understand that this blueprint of creation is it's within us, it's within our bodies, it's within our soul, within our spiritual body, it's within everything that's created. So um, it's a really cool concept, and also the source of where it comes from. So you've got to understand that the Kabbalistic, the Jewish Kabbalistic lineage is rich with spiritual information, deep, deep, deep spiritual information, and the custodians of this knowledge are have been and still are today men and women, people that are of a very, very high standard of purity, a very high standard of purity. They live in a sense of understanding that they are a soul in a body, living this experience in life, and not a body with a soul. And their entire life and everything that they're doing is dedicated to serving Hashem, which means God or Creator.
Yeah, yeah.
And they and the entire modus of operandi, everything that they're doing is about service. Eating is about service, sleeping is about service. Everything is about how to serve Hashem, how to serve God in the purest way, in the most beautiful way. So there was a Kabbalist, the ultimate. He was the initial Kabbalist who was able to download from the higher spiritual realms. He was able to download the Kabbalah into this physical world, into this earth, into this world, this realm that we live in. And his
Yeah.
name was Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he's buried in a place called Meron in Israel. And on the day of his passing, it's called a Yortzeit, on the day of his passing, thousands and thousands and thousands of people from all over Israel, from all over the world, they go together to his gravesite, to his kever. A gravesite is called a kever, and they go to his gravesite and they pray there, not to him. They're not praying to the deceased. They're praying at the space where he was buried, and the reason why they're praying at the space is because he was a human being that managed to hold such a pure soul throughout his entire lifetime, that his soul even penetrated the depth of his body. So even his body, his soul, not everything that he was is holy, is sacred, very sacred. And the place where he's buried becomes like a Wi-Fi zone that sort of sends prayers in a higher way to the source of where prayers need to be heard. So that was Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. He was the rabbi, the man, the master who brought down and downloaded the Kabbalah. And there's a big understanding about Kabbalah. So just to explain Kabbalah quickly, because there's been a big Western mainstream acceptance and love and appreciation for Kabbalah, and just to understand what Kabbalah really, really, really is. Because for someone to be able to truly, truly learn Kabbalah, they would have spent at least 40 years of their life immersed in all the other sacred teachings of the Torah, into the Gemara, into the Mishnah, into all the different other realms, the Halacha. They would be fluent in all the other realms of all the other teachings. And at that point, when they're past 40 years old, they would start learning Kabbalah. And the Kabbalistic circles were these secret circles. They weren't taught to other people. They weren't taught outside. They were very specific students that would be groomed up and selected, and then they would join these Kabbalistic circles, and they would be taught these Kabbalistic secrets and these teachings. But it was kept very, very insular, very, 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 very protected, even within the Jewish nation. That there were only select few within the Jewish nation that would actually be able to participate, and they would have a soul desire and a yearning towards the Kabbalistic route. So it's a very specific, vein, so to speak, in the whole body, in the whole body. But it's a very specific one because of the mysticism and what it brings in. So that was all brought down by Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he had a student, and his name was the Arizal. The Arizal he was a great student, and he used to really sit by his Rebbe, by his feet, and learn all the Torah from him in the most humble way. And he would learn and learn and learn. And I want to just tell a story just to give so you could get an understanding of who these human beings were, and also an idea of their relationship.
Okay.
So the Arizal was the student of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who brought the Kabbalah to the world. And the Arizal had a student. His student was Reb Chaim Vital. Okay, so the Arizal was once walking in a forest. And they were walking on a path in a forest, a clear path, and they were walking, him and his student, Reb Chaim Vital. And essentially, all of a sudden, the Arizal, he turned and he walked into the forest off the path. He walked about 200 meters off the path. He then turned right and he walked another 500 meters in the forest, like a really terrible terrain, really hard to walk through. And then he turned another right and he walked another 200 meters back onto the path. So in truth, he did like a rectangular shape into the forest, and then got back onto the path. And his student, Reb Chaim Vital, he turned around to him. He said, like, Rebbe, like, what was the point of that? That's so weird. We were walking on the straight path, and then you just went off into the forest. It was like really uncomfortable. We walked through thorns and all these. Now we're back on the path. Why did you do that? And the Arizal turned to him and he said, "Can you see behind there? Can you see that really big rock? There's a big rock over there." He says, "Yes." He said, "Inside that rock, there was a soul that was trapped doing a rectification from its previous lifetime. And I knew that if we walked past it, we would have caused it a lot of embarrassment. So I decided to walk in the forest instead, would walk around instead of to embarrass the soul that's stuck in that rock." So that was like the space that these guys were holding in. They weren't worried about how much money they were making or how to pay rent or what clothes they were buying. They were really focused every single day, all the time, on just how to draw down lofty realms, lofty divine energy, light into this world. That was the main focus. So I aspire to connect with teachers like of this kind of caliber. And these are where all the teachings that come from. So for the masterclass, what I wanted to explain was the Sefirot. Now, I do need to have a bit of an image. It would make it easier, but I'm going to explain to you what the Sefirot are.
Can I just
Yeah,
interrupt you there for a second?
yeah.
This isn't the masterclass. This is just the interview, just to meet
Yes,
you.
yeah, cool. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So
all
just
right.
going to give
No, this is a great foundation. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Shkoyach. So essentially, the way the Kabbalists look at creation, and it's interesting because a lot of the Kabbalistic insights and the Kabbalistic, which are thousands of years old, today modern science is starting to sort of put a measured fact on whatever Kabbalists have been saying before.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. One of the interesting ones is that it's a thing for a Jewish boy at the age of 8 days old to have a circumcision. That's where he gets his spiritual name, and that's where he really comes into the tribe. And it's a process that we've been keeping since thousands of years. It always has been, it always will be, and even in some countries they try to prevent Jewish people from doing circumcision. And there's so many reasons why in the logical mind it could make sense that one shouldn't circumcise, but for the Jewish people, it's something we do. It's a covenant that we have. Essentially, modern day science recently proved that on the 8th day of a baby boy's life, on the 8th day, his immune system's ability to heal blood clotting is the highest, higher than on the 7th day and higher than on the 9th day, specifically on the 8th day. And that's the day that the Jewish people have been doing the circumcision since the beginning of time. So it's just an interesting thing how the mysticism and science are starting to interlink and to prove each other,
Wow.
so to speak, instead of to disprove each other. So it's
Yeah.
just an amazing thing. So the Sefirot, essentially, the way the Kabbalists explain it is that for for the soul, which everything in the world that exists has a level of soul, which is called nefesh. Everything from a rock, which is an inanimate object, to a plant, which is a higher form of species, but it's still sort of really stuck to a certain space depending on the plant. And then you have a chaya, which is an animal, which has a higher level of, it has instinct and it moves around, it has to get its food. It doesn't just sit in one place like a plant. It's not really getting its life force. It's getting its life force, same life force, but it's getting it a different way. It's an animal. It's got a higher way of functioning. And then the high level is obviously a human being, which has, and one of the beautiful teachings, the difference between, well, many differences, but one of the differences between a human being and an animal, and we see it in the way that we actually stand up, that a human being stands up, that we have our mind is in the highest place, which then goes to our heart, and then it goes to our desire, which is in the lowest place. But when an animal, I mean, in some cases, obviously a gorilla or baboon could stand up on its hinds, but generally it's not. It's on all fours, and it's showing that its mind and its heart and its instinct are all sort of in the same level. And that's the difference between human beings and animals. That we have the ability of thinking about godliness. We have the ability of thinking about what's good and what would be for the greater good, and what would be for kindness for another person. We have that ability of doing that. So essentially what the Sefirot, what the Kabbalists explained, is that there are 4 different spiritual worlds before godly light can come into this world. So for that soul, for the nefesh to be able to be inside the rock, or be inside the plant, or be inside the whale or the elephant, or inside myself, inside one, inside any human being, godly light is way too powerful to be able to sort of, for a human body to just contain a soul. It's too powerful. So what the Kabbalists explain is that godly light has to go through a contraction process from the higher realms, where there is the essence of where it's just God, the realm where there's just creator. There's no other creation. It's before creation. So I'm talking about, there's a realm that where godliness, there's a realm that God represents as before time and before time and before place and before human creation. So there's an aspect of us trying to understand godliness on a level that's above time, that's above this year, even that. So from that level, we understand that God existed before time, and God will exist after time, because time is a creation itself. So God had to create time for us to have time. God had to create a reality for time to exist. But beyond that reality, which is our reality that we're in now, God exists beyond time. So there's a level where godliness is where there's an unconceivable, ununderstandable, no human being, no matter how smart he is, no matter how righteous he is, and no matter how much he's learned, will even be able to start understanding godliness in the highest level. So there's a level that's not understandable. And from that level, what happens is for godliness, for a soul to be able to fit inside a body, or inside a rock, or inside a tree, for life force to be able to penetrate and exist, for the breath of God to be able to exist within us in this life, he had to contract his own light, so to speak, so that it could go through certain contractions, which the Kabbalists call tzimtzumim. It's called a tzimtzum. Like if I had a really big program on the computer and I want to get it onto a flash drive, but I can't move it onto the flash drive, so I've got to tzimtzum it, I've got to contract it, so now it's smaller, so I can now move it onto the flash drive. So godly light works pretty much the same. For godliness to come into this realm and to penetrate into everything that exists, it has to go through a contraction. And this contraction is called the tree of life. That's what the tree of life is. It's the molecular structure of God's contraction, his blueprint of how he gets godly energy, life force into this realm, into our reality. So the same way, if I said to you, like oxygen, what's the molecular structure? I hope that's the right word. I'm not a scientist, but what's the molecular structure of oxygen? So you'd say it's like a circle with a line, or a circle. Would say, what's the structure of, and you'd give you a structure. So what the tree of life is, it's the blueprint, it's the structure of creation. How from the level of where there's just godliness, this level where there's nothing but godliness. I'm talking about a level that's higher than where like souls go to in the next world, and higher where souls come down to before they come into this world. It's before creation. So it's only godliness. You see, as this tzimtzum, as this contraction process happens through the Sefirot, so what happens is the godly light gets contracted through different spiritual worlds until it gets to the lowest spiritual world, which is called the world of Asiya. And then from there, it manifests into this physical world. And that's how, through this contraction process, that's how godly light, godliness, soul, nefesh can fit into a rocket, into a plant, into our bodies, into all these different things. So the masterclass is really to go deeper on that whole process, the Sefirot, each chamber, what they mean, the 4 different worlds, how that works, and just understanding it with more clarity. And there's a beautiful thing about, and I wanted to also speak about, because Kabbalah and Hasidus are they're interconnected. They're interconnected. There was a great rabbi, and this is like my mentor of mentors. His name was the Baal Shem Tov.
Mhm.
And the Baal Shem Tov, he was born on the 25th of August, I think it was right, yeah, in the year 1698, and he passed away in 1760. So his lifetime is 62 years of life on this planet. He was a hidden tzaddik. He was, like I explained to you, those hidden circles. He was a hidden tzaddik. So he lived 400 years ago, around that era. Um, and he completely revolutionized Judaism. He completely, one man revolutionized Judaism, and that revolution is still in effect, and it's not just affecting the Jewish people; it's affecting everyone in the world. And that's really one of the things that I also wanted to teach about today, or in the masterclass. I'll share that time. But the Baal Shem Tov was an absolute revolutionary who, through his teachings, has reawakened a spiritual revolution in the world. And it's a really powerful revolution that's happening. And that's why he introduced Hasidus. And Hasidus is medicine, but not medicine that you take in your mouth or that you rub on your body. It's medicine that enters the ears, because it's truth, it's words of truth. It's the understandings from him, the understandings of godliness from his life journey, and from all the information that came through him and was ever downloaded through him. He was also a healer. It's really interesting. The Baal Shem Tov, he was a healer. He lived in the Ukraine. He was buried in Bush. His gravesite is also a place that thousands of people go to from all over the world to ask for blessings for children, and blessings for health, and blessings for all different types of things. And they get blessings. They go there and they pray there. And he spent 7 years of his life in the Carpathian Mountains in the Ukraine, which is a huge mountain range over there. And while he was in the Carpathian Mountains, he learned from all different healers and tribal people that lived in the mountains, all the different healing potentials from all the different plants that existed in the mountains. So he came back after being 7 years in the Carpathian Mountains. He came back to the Ukraine where he was, and he started to heal and to start working with the plants, and started healing people. And he also started to use the knowledge of the Torah and the healing of having morals and the healing of ethics and the healing of truth. And he started to spread that into all his surroundings, to the extent that he was a very, very wise, very, very learned man. He used to dress up like a peasant, and he used to mix in with all the peasants at the time and teach them and heal them and help them and get them up and going. And then they would go and help other people. And he started a whole influx of healing into the world. So the reason the Sefirot is really important to understand, even if the mind doesn't yet understand it, and it takes a little bit of time to understand it, is because this is how it works. I'm going to finish off on this, is that the body is the casing of the soul. The soul is a part of God. The soul is a part of the highest source possible. The soul is beyond this lifetime, and it's beyond the next. The soul moves through all lifetimes. Okay, the soul is it's indestructible. The soul. Now, what happens is the soul gets put inside a body. The body comes from this reality. The body comes from South Africa or Israel or China or Australia, or the body has an ancestry that goes back to Africa, or it goes back to It goes back to Holland, or it goes back to all these different places. Okay, so there's this genetic system that's being passed on through us from our previous ancestors, and there's these links of genetics coming through into the body. So the body is a certain intelligence that we have, and the soul is a certain intelligence that we have. So yes,
Yeah.
the truth is, there's two of us that occupy the same space. There's a body that has its desires, its wants, and its needs, and we have a soul that has its desires, its wants, and its needs. Now, either the body is schlepping the soul around for a lifetime, or the soul is taking the body around for a lifetime. And this is why this information is really important, because Hasidus, the teachings from the Baal Shem Tov, and the teachings of the Kabbalists from Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, from the Arizal, from Reb Shimon, from Reb Chaim Vital, these masters that I've been teaching about.
Yeah.
The reason why this is important is because essentially the way to affect the soul, the way to bring healing to the soul is through the senses. And the only way to bring healing through the soul is through the eyes, the nose, the mouth, or the ears, through the senses. And that's why medicine, you either take it through your mouth, or you take an eye drop in the eye, because essentially that's how it's getting, the effect is going into the soul through the senses. So Chassidus and Kabbalah, the Sefirot, and just understanding them, it's medicine that goes into the ear, and even if it's not yet understood, it will integrate at times. The medicine goes into the ears, and it affects and it heightens the soul. So that's why I'm on this mission to teach this medicine.
Sure. Wow. I'm really looking forward to that class. Uh, just just for those of you uh, who are interested in medicine that goes in through the eyes, um, I, I've been using some of that medicine, and I can tell you something. Uh, it takes a brave soul, a brave person to use that. But I must say, it brings instant clarification and instant restoration to the soul, especially a tormented soul. And I've experienced that, but it's you just cannot explain. You cannot explain actually uh, how powerful it is. That's all I'm going to say. We'll leave the rest for the masterclass. You can teach us on that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful. Thank you for your blessings, and for those of you who are interested in this masterclass, please tell your friends, because this is going to be one for the history books for AcuDetox Clinics South Africa, and for our students and for our practitioners. Awesome. Thank you, Moshe.
Thanks a lot,
Bless you,
guys.
brother.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. God bless you.
All right. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.